everyone, and welcome back to yet another episode of Battle Rap Resume. This is your host, Tom Kwei here. Of course, follow us at Battle Rap Resume, support us on Patreon, iTunes. If you support on Patreon, I should say, as well, you get access to a little RSS link that you can put into your player. So episodes like this and Mastermind and, you know, any interviews and Battle Rap Resume sins and all that sort of stuff, that goes on there first, goes directly to your phone or to your player or whatever. We're on Spotify. Email us, battleresume@gmail.com. Leave us a review online, go back through the archive, all that sort of stuff. But yeah, today I am joined by, you know, truly one of my favourite people in battle rap, and I'm sure a lot of fans feel the same way. This guy is one of the funniest, most creative, kindest, most inspiring dudes out there. Shuffle, how's it going, man?
Holy shit, mate. That's very generous. Yeah, I'm good, man. How are you?
I'm great, and like, you know, I mean, I know we don't really know each other that well or whatever, but I feel genuine pride, you know, knowing you and that you're doing this project. Like, we'll get to the rhyming dictionary more as we get through the episode, but it's an incredible feat, even to be here now with it finished and the fundraiser going.
Thank you, man. Yeah, it's been a long process. You know, I've been doing this since about 2012, I think, 2012, and then got Jamie Blees, who a lot of people know through sort of his multi-spotter page and things like that, where he used to point out accidental multis and that kind of things, where he just seems rhymes on, you know, signs and just real life, and got him involved in about 2013, 14, something like that, and we've just been working solidly. Well, I say solidly, obviously not solidly, but we've been working a lot with it in the background just over that time, and it's been a long process, but to have it at the point where it's practically finished, and you know, there's these publishers are, you know, really positive about it, and I'm optimistic about the crowdfunding as a whole, and yeah, it feels amazing. It'll feel more amazing when it's an actual physical thing, but just being here is insane.
And, you know, the project as a whole is testament to how much you love words, and clearly for all the, you know, battle rap history as well, we've seen that. But like, I'm just interested, like, you when you were younger, like I myself, like I'm sure a lot of other people in battle rap, really into creative writing, poetry, maybe kept a diary. Like, what was young Shuffle into words wise?
Well, I mean, I've always been into like comedy, and comedy is based around wordplay. Obviously, it's, you know, it's one of the hearts of it, is you know, a pun or things like that. And
four candles, etc. Yeah.
Exactly, that kind of thing. You know, I was brought up in a household where my parents were, you know, very funny, particularly my dad.
I imagine your dad's hilarious. I just get that vibe.
He is. But he's also sort of like, when you meet him, you realise that he just takes the piss out of you. It's I actually called him today when I was on a walk, and I think the first thing he said was, "How you doing, you piece of shit?" Right. And then, you know, it's quite I don't know if it's actually that unique. I imagine this is kind of thing that a lot of people have with their fathers or their parents, but like, for me, it's sort of where a lot of my interests have been born out of, is that around the dinner table where everyone was always making jokes and everyone was always ripping the piss out of each other, and we like to, me and my dad particularly, we like to make the jokes that were the most awkward. So there's a lot of sort of incest jokes going around the Sunday family dinner table, because it's the most, because obviously that's the thing that's going to make people feel most awkward. And every time I brought a new friend back, he was always the guy who, you know, would rip the piss out of them. But the first and pretty much only book that my dad gave me was a dictionary, just the Chambers Concise Dictionary, and he basically gave it to me in the idea that this is the only book you'll ever really need. So there was so much interest born out of that at an early age. This was when I was maybe about sort of 11 or 12, and we used to just talk about words. He's got a massive fascination with words as well, and like etymology. We talk about etymology together all the time, and you know, we love the makeup of words and the patterns of words, and how, you know, language is like a jigsaw, and it's something to be put together with things like rhymes and things like, you know, homonyms and homophones and things like that they're all there for you to discover. It's more like archaeology, where it's like these things all exist, you just have to uncover them. You're not really making anything up yourself. You're using words that have been there since their inception, you know, hundreds or sometimes even thousands of years ago. You're just putting them together in a way that, you know, we own nothing but the words themselves. We don't really own anything. It's just sort of playing with the things that are already there.
Yeah, I felt the same way about puns and wordplay. Like, I'm obsessed with them, and I'm kind of working on my own mini kind of app around puns and stuff. Not to shoehorn my project in. I'm not on Unbound and anything like that. But it's like I love puns, as every battle rapper loves puns, every poet loves puns. But existentially, I have a bit of a crisis because it's just coincidence, isn't it? There's not actually any meaning behind it. It just happens to be that the sounds align.
Well, exactly, and that's kind of the beauty of it, is the happenstance. You know, this isn't. Obviously, a lot of the time you can look through a root of two words that have something in similar, and you'll realise that they come from the same, bit of language, or they come from the same Latin root or whatever. But like when there isn't that link and two words just happen to line up, then that's no one's design. That's your discovery. That's what's so beautiful about it. That's what, like, me and Jamie Blees have had this conversation 1,000 times about words that have no business rhyming together, but they do. Like Sherman Clump and Kirsten Dunst is one of the ones that we talked about a long time ago. It's like, I think he said, I've got a rhyme for Kirsten Dunst, can you clock it? And I remember immediately getting it, and then saying to him, like, of all the words, of all the things that there are that rhyme with that, I know the one that you're trying to say is Sherman Clump of the Nutty Professor fame. And those two words, they have nothing in common, just like Scarlett Johansson and Ardal O'Hanlon. How often do they get said in the same sentence? They shouldn't be. They're nothing to do with each other.
I mean, she is my hero, but yeah.
And he's mine. But yeah, I mean, like, that's what language is about, is finding those hidden roots, or not even roots, just those hidden pathways that just happen to lead, a secret passageway that leads between two areas of language that, probably came from different ends of the earth when you look back at them, but they happen to line up and you happen to have found it, and that's beautiful. And that's, for me, that's why wordplay is so endlessly entertaining and so useful and good for education and things like that, because if you clock something like that, then sometimes you want to know where that comes from, and then you learn a whole new story about that word which has its place in history, and that's always lovely.
And the book is authored by yourself and Jamie Blees Blackmore. Like, you mentioned him just before. Like, what is the relationship there? Was that through battle rap? Was that before that, or? Yeah,
definitely. So I had heard of him before I met him. I met him actually on the day of the Wizard and Scissors battle. Was the day I met him.
Oh, right.
Introduced by Rowan. Just after the event, we went out to like a little pizza place or something like that, and Rowan basically sort of phrased it as, here's someone who's as obsessed with rhymes as you are. And I'd met a lot of people who were obviously obsessed with rhyme and rap and battles and stuff before, so I knew of him, but I didn't know to what extent he was obsessed with it as well, which is fucking very and we spoke for hours and hours and hours, and then we swapped numbers, and then we kept messaging back and forth, and it just never really stopped. And a lot of the time we'd go weeks without any proper conversation. It would just be, here's a rhyme, let's go away and think of a list of rhymes that go with this, and then tomorrow we'll exchange them. It's so weird, but it really worked, and we've been friends for about 5 years now, I guess.
And did that, when did the idea for the book come about, the dictionary? Like, because obviously with all those texts going back and forth, naturally the inclination would be to have some sort of archive just for yourself personally, if no one else.
Exactly. I mean, we had WhatsApp as, keeps everything down, but then you have to search through WhatsApp to find all those kind of things. And I'd already been keeping note of rhymes in a little moleskin that I had at the time, a little sort of, just smaller than A5.
That'll be priceless in years to come. That'll be like one of Van Gogh's sketchbooks or something.
I've got the first one, which is, it's not, so it went through 2 drafts basically. I had the first one, but it wasn't keeping to any kind of, there was no index that was like reliable, and there was no way of, going through and checking back on things. And also it wasn't just 2 and 3 syllable rhyme schemes as the current one is. There was also things like every time I had a battle, I would just write a new thing in there, like Matthew Carstens. When I battled 100 Bullets, I remember putting his full name, Matthew Carstens, in there. And then actually Theo clocked Alex Larson, the Kid Twister. And then that would be a page. But then I realized you can't put down every single scheme ever. It's just too ridiculous. There are far too many variations of syllable patterns, or of even the difference between something like Tom Hardy and, rock starter. Let's say, for example, like they both have da and da at the beginning, but one ends with E and one ends with and so they're not the same. So you have to make a separate one for that. And then what about one that ends with don da ding? Then you have to make a separate one for that, even though they're the same sounds. The last syllable is just off enough that you have to make a new column. So obviously it's ridiculous to think that you can make a fully comprehensive rhyme dictionary. It just is too vast. So I sort of simplified it, or we simplified it to be something that was, kind of a beginner's catch-all starter pack, basically, which was 2 syllables, where both are stressed, like payday, mates rates, face paint, vacate, etc., where it was just 2 vowel sort of assonance sounds. And then the idea came of, I wonder how many sounds there are like that. How many vowel sounds are there? Is there a finite amount? And obviously there is. There's 18 roughly, as far as I'm concerned, or we're concerned, is 18 sounds. And so when you realize that, then you realize in 2 syllable words, if they're using both those sounds, then there's 18 times 18 variations of those sounds. And then this is when you start to, you go, oh, okay, so there's a way to do this, because 18 times 18 is 324, and that's how many schemes there are for that syllable structure. And then we thought, okay, well, let's just do all of them. Let's just write down what they'd be as a starter point. And this is a couple years into the project. This is a couple years after the first book, the first Moleskine book had been done, and we sort of scrapped it all back, because when I was starting, I was writing down shit. They were really bad examples of what a rhyme is. They're not like self-contained ideas. They're just sort of like, if it was payday, then it would be like make pain, and that's it needs to be something that is in its own context, in its own definition, without context, like payday. Everyone knows what payday is. You know what mates rates are. You know what face paint is, but you don't know what make pain is. That's just, that could be in any context. It's just a bit too vague. So yeah, we just sort of got down the amount of schemes we needed to do, and we got started on that and went through it.
Yeah, and I remember when we did our initial Battle Resume episode, which would have been like 2016, 2017, something like quite a long time ago. And the first 20 minutes or so, we were speaking about rhyme, and we spoke about David Crystal. And I need to go back and listen to it exactly, but you were talking about the book during that, and you were saying there were certain rhymes that you couldn't get, and you were asking people what they were. And I think one of them you were asking for like ear hair, and I still get comments on the Podbean account with people doing ear hair multis, like.
That's right, yeah. So there's tear here, which is the only one that we've got for ear. And even that, we're not 100% sure about whether it's enough of a thing. Like, what I mean when I say tear here. It's like that little thing on a, but it's not exactly a phrase or a term. And then that's, what was that, tear here? That, and then there's, like you say, ear hair.
Sounds like weird stare, which again is
what we've got is ear hair and beer fair.
Beer fair,
beer fair is, it's kind of tenuous, but it's enough of a thing. I'm sure people have been to a beer fair. You know what it is, and so it's kind of it's just on the cusp. But there's a lot where it's almost impossible to get more than one, or even if it's more than 2 or 3, it's still really frustrating, because we aim to get at least 8 for every scheme. But when you get into those sounds, there's a couple of key sounds that's just so difficult to get around, which is like oi, ear, air, and sometimes ow can be quite difficult. And so it gets really, really tricky.
But I guess the beauty is that it will be a living text, and like the dictionary your dad gave you, or like rhyming dictionaries that exist now. You get second, third editions. I'm guessing that's what the plan is eventually. Adapting it.
Definitely, and I want to make a sort of online forum of sorts. Like, I don't know if you've seen, I've been doing the Facebook
I love
page.
That. Everyone needs to join the Advanced Rhyming Dictionary for Rappers and Poets. It's a fantastic group, and it's really been taken to by so many battlers and fans.
Yeah, a lot of people are getting involved. It's nice to just put up. I actually forgot to do one today. God damn it! But put up a little celebrity image, and then just say, what rhymes can you get off here? And it's a weird home for nerds like us to sort of go on and just I guess win a rhyme, which is fun. And I want that to develop. If the book is successful, which I really am optimistic about, then I want that page or possibly a website in the future to live as a place not only for people to come and do that same thing, mess about with rhymes and have discussions about rhymes if they want to, but also to be a place where suggestions are put down, because the wisdom of crowds and all that. I'm sure of even the 1,000 people that have joined it now, I'm sure one of them probably has a rhyme for ear hair that I haven't got, or another one, like tears of joy that we have trouble with. I'm sure someone will have one for tears of joy that we just haven't thought of yet. And sometimes it just takes an outsider's perspective. And when you're sat down and you're going through rhyme after rhyme after rhyme after rhyme, you get a bit. I never get bored by it, to be honest, as nerdy as that sounds. But you can become sort of numb to it. You can run yourself into a rut and then realize that there's probably the most obvious rhyme. You fucking musical hero, his name might rhyme with the thing that you're doing it, but you wouldn't clock it because you're just too much in the hole of of trying to find rhymes that it almost works against you. But yeah, I do want that with further editions and stuff. I want there to be a forum where people can suggest and then, be marked as contributors as well to the rhyme dictionary. Because I mean, this is for this kind of rhyme. This is the first time it's been done, and so it will be a collaborative project. There are a lot of names that are going to go in there. People who've maybe suggested one or two, or people who've suggested about 100. Like Frankie Fraser has contributed. Loads, and his brother Charlie Spears, who probably people know more as Grand Creator GC, has contributed so much, and both of those guys have probably done. And these are on the more difficult ones that we're sort of stuck with, and they've had hundreds, and lots of people just sort of like seeing it in passing and then being like, "Oh, that one works," and I go, "Oh, fuck yeah, of course it does." Shit. Then I get really annoyed at myself for not clocking it, but then then it goes in the book because it is the first time this has all been put down in print, and so it has to be a sort of collaborative effort.
And what was that decision on you and Jamie's part to actually have it as a published tome and not just kind of a fun PDF document between friends?
It's a good question, really, because I mean, originally, to be honest, until about last year, midway through last year, I don't think the idea to publish it was ever really there. It was more, wouldn't it be fun to get this made like one copy?
Yeah. And
we wanted to or two copies, one for us each to have. What a fun idea to get this thing that we've been handwriting as well. We've got it's not on computers until about a month ago. Well, just over a month ago, it got put down onto my laptop. But before that, it was all just existing in these two books, this collection over two books, Volume 1 and Volume 2. And we just thought, wouldn't it be amazing to see this as a physical thing, as something that we could hold? And we both agreed there would be so much pride around that. And we looked into it, and it was a little bit tricky, quite expensive to get just even one copy made, because you've got to design every aspect of it, and you've got to, even if it's just silly, you want to make it look cool. And then I started looking at publishers and, put something out on Twitter, just seeing if anyone would be able to help with publishers. And someone, my friend Guy Kelly, recommended Unbound, which is just great. It's a great way to, especially for like first time writers, and if you've got a little bit of a following, like obviously the battle rap scene has got a little bit of a following, personally, then it's ideal for people who are willing to, people who know that this project has existed for years, but now it's becoming a reality, and people seem to want to see it be made.
And yeah, I mean, the Unbound link we'll put down below. Obviously, people can go pledge there. It looks like it needs a lot of pledges, though. It's got 150 backers at the time of us doing this, which is 34%. I mean, I don't want to get into the nitty gritty, but it's quite a fair wodge of cash needed to get this going, right?
It is, yeah, it is. There is a fair whack. I mean, it's every aspect of the book has to be accounted for, and then afterwards, if it is successful, then Unbound become your publisher, fully. And then obviously, when the initial investment's in, then it's just going to be sold to bookshops and that kind of thing, and it'll be like any other traditional publisher. But there is a fair whack of money to raise. I think I've been advised not to go into the amount that much, but if people want to work this out, then they can. We're at around about 5,000, and it's about 34% done. So that's about a third. So actually, you don't really need to work that out very much, do you? 15,000. It's about 15,000, which is a lot of money to raise. And when I started, I was really, really, really apprehensive about it. I was really fearful that, obviously, you're asking people to invest in something, but then the point is that the minimum you get is a copy of the book, and that's £20. And when you think about it, I mean, what is a hardback book about? Between 10 and 15. So it's sort of paying for the book in advance, and then just a little bit of support on top of that. A fiver, let's say, which is not bad in terms of putting yourself in. And if it fails, which I obviously hope it doesn't, but everyone obviously gets their investment back. It just gets sent back immediately to you. So there is no risk. It's like at the very minimum you get a book. At the very most you get your money back, and that'll feel great. But
and you were kind enough to send me a proof, so I don't need to donate now, which is great.
That's fine.
And but it's like it's 8,500 words. I'm sure there might be a bit more added to it, so it's a huge bang for your buck. The amount of rhymes in here and variety is incredible. And I was just sort of showing it people at work the other day who they know who you are, they know Shovel T and Marlowe, but they don't really understand multis or anything like this. And we were just marveling. It is just every single page just brings a smile to your face. And structurally, it's going to be like an introduction. From what I gather from the Unbound, so you're going to write like a little kind of essay piece, or how's that going to work?
Yeah, there's a couple of thousand words just at the top of the book that's already written, and it's just sort of giving a bit of background into what this kind of rhyme is, why it's significant, why it's important to be written down, because I think it's been largely cast off because a lot of I think people who would traditionally sort of invest in this or back a project like this would be obviously like a publisher, but I think publishers see this as sort of I think they're a bit scared of it because it's a bit new, that this type of rhyming isn't traditional. It's not sort of something that's been ingrained into our brains for years and years and years and centuries, like traditional rhyme is, perfect rhyme if you will. This is something a bit more sort of scruffy and a bit more like messy around the edges, and this kind of rhyme isn't an exact science. It's something you have to pick up on, and it's something you have to work at. Whereas traditional rhyme, rhyming is, it's a limiter in the sense that you have to rhyme to, if you're writing in rhyme, then you have to rhyme to the next word, but there's only one syllable, so it's very easy to do. Whereas this is you're taking more than one syllable, 2, 3, 4, however many, and you're limiting yourself to be able to get your point across in that limitation, which is difficult, which is why rap is, I think it's easier to look, and I know this might come across badly, but it's not the point I'm trying to make. But what I'll say is that I think it's easier to look good at poetry to the untrained eye than it is to look good at rap to the untrained eye. I think when you see someone do some rap, you immediately, a lot of people sort of cringe or they pick up on things, if they're from outside of the world. But I think if someone was to do traditional poetry with traditional rhyming, people from the outside maybe see it as something a bit more esoteric and a bit more emotional and that kind of thing. So they let things slide. You wouldn't be as picky. It seems more personal a lot of the time as well. But with rap, if you're using multisyllabics, then you've got a real limiter there. And certainly to an extent, spoken word poetry as well, which is, also what this book is aimed to sort of cater towards, is a spoken word crowd as well, because it's really seeping into that world.
And Unbound, as you said, is essentially Kickstarter for the publishing world. So there are a litany of rewards. I mean, talk us through a few of them. Like, some of them are so good. Like, you'll perform a battle. You can just go to the pub with you. Like, talk about rhymes. Like, I love the variety.
Yeah, I mean, it's just one of those things where these kind of rewards are things that other people have done very similarly.
Yeah.
It's get a meeting with the writer, or the writer will come and do a talk with your company or with you or whatever, that kind of thing. And when I was thinking about how to work them, I was thinking I wanted to sort of do it around things that I basically already do. Things like the wedding battle that we did, for example, a few years ago. Me and Theo, we turned up to a wedding and we battled the groom. And then I thought, well, I could just do that by myself, but without it being a wedding. I'll just turn up and battle you, by surprise. You nominate a friend or something like that. And I'll just write as if it was a real battle. Or the videos, for example, there's something where it's like, I'll send you a minute-long video of me just sort of like personally battle rapping or like roasting you or your friend or your wife or your dad or whatever, because that was something I was doing a few years ago as well. I was sort of like trying to do those
the Shuffle
personalised
Tea
videos.
Company, was that right?
Yeah.
That Harry Baker and Crafty maliciously misused.
They did, the bastards. But water under the bridge, frozen water from my hatred, but still.
So, and there's no timer, right? Unbound will just go on infinitely, or?
There is actually a timer.
Oh, there is? Okay.
They aim to have projects done within the first 3 months. They can be pushed back. But obviously, the sooner it gets funded, the sooner we can get into the actual publishing of it. So if it happened in a month, if it got to 100%, then that's when production would start. And if it happened in 6 months, then that's when production would start. So the aim is to get it done as soon as humanly possible, which has been going well. I mean, the target is 30% in 30 days, they say, and it's been 1 day over a week and we're on 34%. So it's doing very well. It's just about keeping that momentum going. And, obviously it's going to have an initial spike and then it's going to slow down. But it's all about trying to keep interest present so that, it continues and snowballs.
Yeah, I know. Again, I want to urge everyone listening to go support this book. It is an incredible book, and as I'm sure you do as well. Whenever I go to Waterstones or whatever, I'm always looking into the poetry writing sections, and this would just fit on the shelf. Like, there's a lot of bullshit on the shelf, and this is so much more relevant, I think, to people's interests.
Well, I think so, man. Like, I think a lot of people, whenever I've heard the name Rhyme Zone, for example, many times said, and this isn't anything against Rhyme Zone. I think Rhyme Zone is fine. I don't necessarily use it. I use my own book, obviously, but there's something about having a physical thing, a physical representation that's been written by a person or people, where that there's been so much thought gone into every single entry that we're not trying to cut corners or just put words together. Like Rhyme Zone sometimes will give you a suggestion of something that's just the rhyme sound is there, but it makes no sense, or you have to then work it into you have to force context, whereas this doesn't force context. It doesn't force meaning. It doesn't mean that you have to go down a route to fit that word in. The beauty of it, and the reason why I've used it so much and why I believe in it, is that every time I have to write for something, I consult the book, I look through it, and you just see all these sort of ways of connecting these myriad of ideas together. And that's what's nice about it. You see two ideas and you go, how can I link those two ideas? And it might be a bit of wordplay, but if I was to take what I'll do is I'll just take a random one now, and this really is random. I'm just going to scroll up and I'm going to stop here. Right, what is it? Eminem and Megadeth and second best and special guest, right? So already there's very obvious ways that you could say, I'm the greatest, there's no second best, you only come on as a special guest. Even that is like an idea that's very easy to sort of say any kind of idea. Megadeth and Eminem, obviously both like artists, you can just link that. Treasure chest, epithet, I make more money than a treasure chest, you barely get an epithet or whatever, something like that. Then it's just what it does is it's sort of like it trains you to put ideas together. And I think more than it just being something that people go into and just lift from, which I think would be the wrong way to do it. There's been a lot, there's been some feedback on the book saying, oh, this is going to be bad for the...
I mean, and Shotty tweeted about that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. He said, this is basically giving people a way to just go into the book and, oh, you can't multi, then go on here, and then you can just lift from here. And I get what he's saying, and it's definitely a good point. However, you could say the same about someone writing with a dictionary generally. Everyone who owns a dictionary isn't a linguist, and everyone who owns a calculator isn't a mathematician, and everyone who owns a
calculator,
or a game of Tekken isn't a fighter.
Sure.
These are just references. These are just things that you look at for inspiration, and then you go, oh, that gives me an idea. That's why half of it is a workbook. It's only in each page, half of the page is left blank for you to add things to. The idea is that you don't just lift things, because that's the sign of a bad writer. That's the sign of a bad writer who just goes through a book and just lifts things and just puts them into the thing and goes, yeah, that's fine, I'm done. And, there's more to rap than rhyming words. Much more, so much more. It's almost one of the smallest parts of it. It's my favorite part, but, what you're saying is the most important part. Like, can you get across your idea in this amount of words, and not corrupt it? That's how you know someone's good, when someone makes a point well in rap. It's not, you can do monosyllabic rap and still be amazing. People love Tupac, and Tupac wasn't doing like complex long rhyming schemes, and Biggie wasn't doing those kind of things. He was using a lot of rhymes condensed into one space, but it doesn't mean he's amazing at rhyming. But people like his content. That's what makes a good writer, not how well can you rhyme words. Otherwise, I'd be a good rapper, which I'm not. I'm a good rhymer of words, and I can battle rap when there's a specific thing to go on. But I can't make a track in the same way that someone like, Chance the Rapper or Kanye or, Eminem or Tupac can. I can't put that kind of emotion into a track, because that's a different aspect of it, and I just like this one aspect.
It's funny you mentioned Biggie, actually, because I think one of the first mottos I ever heard was "Everyday Struggle." Like, I'm in the caravan on the way to Maryland, and I was like,
there we go, yeah.
And you sort of hear that. And
I
was just
but he wasn't consistently using them.
No, God, no. And I just compared Rhyme Zone to your book as well. So I just picked a word at random, Kashmir, for example, which you mentioned, Tangier, Pap Smear, Gap Year, Blackbeard. Rhyme Zone doesn't come up with anything. It comes up with Than Mere and Crash Near. So that just goes to show that these are pretty incompatible.
And I think that's what it comes down to, is that, like, if you are looking to get meaning into what you're saying in your rap, and you've said Pap Smear for whatever reason, you talk about Pap Smear, that's fine, and then it comes up with, what was it, Crash Near, yeah. Then I think that's so much more difficult to fit into. Now you have to go, right, okay, well, how do I get in Crashed Near, or how do I make that relate to that? It's just like it's such a vague idea. Whereas if you were to take Tangier or Blackbeard, then it feels like, because that's a noun, or because that's an existing thing, it conjures up imagery, and so you go, oh, okay, well, that can lead on to this idea, and then it snowballs, and that's the purpose of the book, is to go, I'm going to take a look at it, I'm going to take some of this in, and then I'm going to come up with my own stuff. It almost gives you hope. I think a lot of the time when you're writing and you're trying to rhyme complex multisyllabic rhymes, you can feel like there aren't any rhymes left, and you go, I don't know how to say the next thing that I'm trying to get at. I don't know how to word it. And then if you look it up, and then it comes up with a list of 8 suggestions, you might not use any of them, but what are the chances that there's only 8? There's probably more than that. And then you go, oh, okay, well, they are more. So now I'm going back into this challenge with a bit more confidence behind me, a bit more backing. I know that the rhymes are there. I just have to find them. Or I have to rewrite and get the idea across in some other rhyme scheme, which is obviously fine.
And just prior to this episode, on Twitter at battlerapresume, we put the call out for any questions people had. Ryan asking Shuffle, what's the longest multi you've ever thought of?
Longest multi I've ever thought of? It's quite a good question. One I should probably have prepared. Well, me and Theo, when we did the compliment battle, I think we had a 21 syllable rhyme scheme, now that I think about it.
Christ.
I think, what was it? Okay, it was something like, so try to count with them, it might not be 21. This guy's a decent this guy's a decent clone of Alka Freak. The man's a decent clone of Alka freaking Pone, a hard case and criminally manly thug. He has the actual hemoglobin of Al Pacino's role in Scarface. That's literally gangster blood. So do you know that's 21? The da 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 da. That was a whole rhyme. We spent ages trying to perfect that. So yeah, 21 syllables, I believe, is the longest that we've ever come up with, and that took hours of of like reverse engineering, because obviously you're probably going to start from the end and work back, and we wanted to say that's literally gangster blood, and then we were like, how weird would it be if we just did this way way beyond the pale of necessity and just made it 21 syllables, which no one's going to probably pick up on except us, but that's fine.
And what about Marlowe? Like, did he have much input? I mean, he's married now, but did he have much input in the book, or?
Yeah, well, I mean, he suggested loads, and whenever we're writing and we get stuck up against it, we always, we'll consult the book if needs be, and then he'll clock one that's not in there, and then it just goes in. He's really good at just throwing a random one once a week or something. He'll just message me, and then I'll go, oh yeah, I think the last one he sent me was, it was for the rhyme scheme, which is like anal beads or table read or Maybelline. And he sent me Jamie T and Baby P. Do you remember Baby P?
Who could forget Baby P? Yeah.
But I hadn't heard the name in so long, and to my shame, I just burst out laughing when I heard Baby P, because I thought, what the fuck? I haven't heard of that name in so long. What throwback! I was really impressed and I like that it's both Jamie T and Baby P. It's an initial at the end.
Yeah.
Oh God, I laughed a lot then. Yeah, Baby P. So yeah, he sends me one just now and then that I don't have in there. He's really good for that. Yeah, so yeah, he has an involvement.
Are there going to be any, because I know everyone who donated is going to get mentioned in the book. Are you going to dedicate it to anyone? I mean, sorry if that's spoilers or anything, but
no. I think like it only makes sense to dedicate it without getting too heavy.
Rowan.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and my mum. No, I think it should go to basically the people who have passed away in battle rap. It seems like it would be appropriate to Pete Cashmore, Bender, PH, and Cadillac Ron, and I think those are the people who and I think those are the people who deserve to be, because they were a part of the scene, and even if this, say this book does get some awareness outside of the battle rap world, then I would like the idea that people could open the page and see these 4 names and go, oh, who are these? And then, look back upon their body of work and discover them a bit, because they're all great and interesting people. And yeah, that's
absolutely. Yeah.
I think that's right.
That's it's very fitting. The fridge asking, like, we kind of touched upon this on our episode. So at the end of each episode, shout out Joe. I always ask, favorite non-hip hop musical artist, and I can't remember who you said, but I remember you said it was kind of like a balladeer, kind of like a down low singer-songwriter. And my friend Danny, who I know will be listening to this, became a giant fan of that guy. Who was it that you mentioned talking about your taste in music?
Oh, would it have been Keaton Henson?
It was Keaton Henson. That's right.
Yeah, he's I like depressing music, which is probably what I said last time. I just like sad songs, and he's one of the saddest people ever. And Daughter, Daughter, I love Daughter.
Oh yeah.
The band, and the Smiths, Radiohead, or anyone who's basically dour and hates themselves. Joy Division,
Nick Drake, are you in that bag or?
Yeah, and also it's so funny that there are some names that I associate with a. This is so pathetic. There are some names that I forget until I think of the rhyme that rhymes with their name.
Right.
And I just had to think of Arabian Nights for Damien Rice. But Damien Rice is another one.
Okay.
Who I love.
Another question from Blue Blood saying, have you ever been approached by Premier Battles? And if not, would you want to be involved?
I was, yes. Shotty reached out to me, I want to say last year. I think first time it was as a battler, and then the second time it was as a sort of presenter aspect and that kind of thing. And I fucking love Shotty. He's one of my favourite people. He's such a charmer. He's lovely. I worked with him a lot on the Versus film, and yeah, really love him. But I mean, I don't necessarily want to get sort of gone into like a contract or something where I like would have to battle, repeatedly. I kind of like, rapping on my own terms if I'm going to do it, and sometimes I get really out of sorts with it, and if I get into a place where I don't want to battle, then the idea of being sort of maybe obligated to do more than one a year might be a bit, I basically wouldn't want to let him down. Yeah. I think that's what it comes down to. I wouldn't want to have to disappoint him and say, oh, I can only do one. And I think we did talk about it. I think he mentioned something about like being a sub for a team or something like that. But I think, I fall in and out of love with battling all the time, and if he asked me today, it might be a different answer, and if tomorrow likewise.
And as someone who was at the Shrewsbury event, it was definitely a blessing in disguise that you guys didn't battle T-Top and Briz. The crowd did not know what a fucking multi was. Let's just say that. Like,
yeah,
that's happening in the summer, right? That's what I'm hearing rumours of, perhaps.
Yeah, I mean, it's not 100% written down yet. I mean, I've been told May at some point. I'm really hoping it is May. I'm not
Great
sure.
Great promo for the book, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. Like anything I can get at the moment. Yeah, even this piece of shit podcast. No, I'm joking. I love this book, but like, yeah, it would be really good promo for the book. It would be great, and also just like it's a fun battle, and we wrote a lot of fun stuff for it. A lot of Shrewsbury-based stuff, which we probably won't be able to use anymore. But yeah, I think the first half or the second half of the first round was just Shrewsbury bars. We learned a lot of stuff about it. Right. Like apparently it has the world's tallest Doric column, and also the UK's tallest town crier. So some pretty interesting stuff there. If you're a Shrewsburyan.
So we'll wrap up with a few quickfire questions, not the ones we normally do. These are ones that I've only asked one other battler, O'Shea. O'Shea wanted to come on the show a few years ago. I don't think he had any battles out. He just wanted to talk. And I just thought it'd be funny to throw the Proust questionnaire at him. I don't know if you're familiar with this. It's basically kind of the, inside the actor's studio. James Lipton kind of, bastardized it. It was popularized by the French writer Proust, and it's kind of like, we're not going to ask them all because there's like 100 questions, but they're just kind of quite interesting questions, quite revealing questions. So, just give a quick answer. What is your greatest fear?
My greatest fear? Oh, I don't know how to answer that. Yeah. I guess
that is a tough question.
Oh. Like I have,
O'Shea, for example, said being shot with an arrow. So
that's such an unlikely circumstance. I don't know. I have base fears, like I'm afraid of flying, for example. Okay. But obviously, I'm only afraid of flying because of death. So I guess death. But then I met someone the other day who was talking to me about chunking, about like going back a level and then back a level to see to unpack an idea. Harvey Gilbert, his name is. He's a keynote speaker, lovely guy, right. And he was saying if you look at one idea, then you have to chunk back and see where that leads to. And so I guess if I say I've got a fear of flying, then that goes back to I've got a fear of heights, and being in the sky. And then if I chunk that back, I've got a fear of what happens if that fails, which is death. And then if I chunk that back, then I'm afraid of what comes after death, which is probably nothingness. So I think my biggest fear, if I go back far enough, is nothingness. There we are.
We're getting somewhere.
Weird. That's a bit nihilistic, but fuck it.
What is the trait you most deplore in yourself?
Oh, God. Being exactly like Ricky Gervais. Fuck it now. I'm sick of it now. I don't want to. I don't even like his, Afterlife and all that stuff came.
I thought that was trash, Afterlife. I couldn't believe people said it was great.
I laughed a lot through it. I found it funny, but I just didn't find that enough to validate it. It was so clearly trying to do something more than make me laugh. It was trying to make me feel and trying to make me, be emotional. And same with Derek. It was trying to sort of do that kind of thing, which I just think it kind of failed that for me. It was so heavy-handed. It was so sloppy. It was so badly directed. It was so on the nose. It was. I just really wasn't a fan of it. And so, if anything, you know, I don't want to be acting like Ricky Gervais, but who I act like is Ricky Gervais circa 2001, very specifically, in The Office and stuff like that. So, but you know, it's got to the point now where I, you know, maybe put on like a character where I'm doing something completely different to how I normally act. And people be like, oh, fucking hell, he's like Ricky Gervais. He's being like Ricky Gervais. I'm like, well, that's not. But you're just so used to me acting like him in most circumstances that it always seems like I'm acting like Ricky Gervais. And sometimes I even want to go, no, you're wrong. I'm acting like Alan Partridge. Like as if that's better. That I'm ripping someone else off. Or no, I'm being like Pat Stay. You just don't understand.
What did you think of the new Partridge series?
I really liked it, you know. I thought there were some really, really good moments of physical comedy. And I thought it was modernised quite well. I thought the edutainment aspect of it was handled quite nice and subtly. And I thought it was very funny. I
mean, this isn't in the Proust questionnaire, but it'd be weird.
Is it not?
No.
Not joking.
Slightly easier. Which talent would you most like to have that you do not currently?
Oh, I've got about 4 answers for that. And I think one would be able to rap, like properly.
Yeah.
One would be play the violin. One would be play the piano and juggle.
Wow.
Oh, and bar flair.
Bar flair?
Yeah, I love bar flair. You know, behind the bar when they're rocking the bottles around.
Oh, sure.
You know, like, you know, fancy mixology. I love that shit. That's brilliant. Oh, God, that's the least philosophical of the lot. I want to be able to be good at a pub.
Who are your favourite writers?
Now, that is a tricky question. That is
Ricky Gervais.
Ricky Gervais. And then Ricky Gervais circa 2007 is a close second.
Yeah.
No, I love Oscar Wilde. I mean, that's a twatty answer.
Great answer.
And George Orwell. I mean, I know they're really obvious, but 1984 is like the best book I've ever read, and then The Picture of Dorian Gray is one of the best books I've ever read. I love them. I can't help that that's an obvious answer, but I just do. And then aside from that, no one, just me. No, I love in rap, for example, I like a lot of sort of. I like Crooked Eye, like Royster 5'9", like Chance the Rapper. I've quite got into recently. Joyner Lucas, those are my favourite writers and that kind of thing. Also, genuinely, you know, and it always sounds when you reference someone after their death like you're trying to put them in because they're dead. Do you know what I mean? But genuinely, Bender, I think is, you know, and a lot of people obviously agree with that. But he is one of my favourite writers, I think, in any medium. I think that song "Tree of Smoke," I don't know if you know it. It's fucking phenomenal.
I'll check it out.
It's got so many amazing lines, and I mean, you know, not even thinking about his battles and stuff, and Lo Pesci as well. You know, with Bender has that line, "Feeling lost as the Minotaur outside the labyrinth." It's a beautiful line. I love that line so much. Feeling lost outside of the labyrinth. It's such a lovely idea, and he just puts those things together so seemingly effortlessly, and it's beautiful writing. It would have been Eminem if he stopped after like three albums.
Yeah.
One of the interesting things I think about Eminem, I also think about The Simpsons, and it's to say they both came up with some of even for people I think who aren't even that big of a fan of them would admit, the most influential of their craft.
Certainly.
You know, not the most, but definitely among them. And technically, you know, writing as well, just amazing in that respect. However, I think both of them have produced more bad stuff now than they have good. So does that make them bad writers? The Simpsons, for example, I think for me died out after about series 12. I've tried dipping into ones after that.
Yeah.
And they've been consistently bad. And that goes up to about series, I don't know, like 28.
Oh, yeah, they're unwatchable now, absolutely unwatchable.
So, and I think that's 16 series to 16 bad series compared to 12 good series. It doesn't negate the original 12, of course, but it does mean that more often than not, they write bad material. which I think is an interest. Does that make them bad writers? Obviously, the writers have gone through. There's been different writers, but is that a bad show? Is The Simpsons a bad show? Not now, but just generally when you take it on average. And I think maybe yes. I think obviously it started incredibly, and you have to acknowledge that. But The Simpsons as a whole, I think, is now a bad show. It has become a bad, not even become. The Thing is a bad show because it's more often bad than it is good. Do you know what I mean?
I completely concur. Yeah, it's like whenever I go around I don't have Sky or whatever. Whenever I go to my parents' house and flicking through and there's an episode on, more often than not, it is like a post-season 12, 13 episode. And I can't. It's unwatchable to me. Like I just cannot get through it. It's a parody of what it was, and it's interesting to think about that. Yeah. What are your favourite names? I guess this means kind of titular names.
As in
just boys' names, girls' names.
Just boys' names.
What names do you like? Yeah,
I've always liked Vincent for a boy.
Vincent, okay.
Yeah, Vincent. If I had a son and I got to decide what he was called, it would be Vincent. 100%. Love that name. I don't know why. I love Vince. I love V's.
Vinny
in words. Yeah, I don't know Vinny. I don't love Vinny.
Okay.
Because I think of Vinny Jones every time.
Vinny Jones. Yeah.
But yeah, Vincent. I like that. And for a girl, I think. I did have one. I did think ages that I'd like to call a girl Venice, but then I realised that's just basically an anagram of Vince and also a place name. That's kind of frowned upon. Maybe Venice is a bit twatty, but I don't know what I could. Persephone I quite like. That's quite a twatty one, but I kind of like it because my first car was called Persephone after the goddess of the underworld.
The underworld. Okay, yeah. Persephone. Yeah. Oh, okay. There you go. Persephone and Vincent. Okay, good choices. Last question.
Pretty twatty.
Well, it's the Proust questionnaire. It's fitting,
Can I make a very quick interjection if it's not too?
Please.
I was going to say something I wanted to talk about earlier, but I completely forgot about. It's to do with rhymes. I'm sorry.
No.
But basically, there's this thing that I've been thinking about recently in terms of sort of like. Rhyming and education, and obviously like there's mnemonics and they've existed for hundreds or probably thousands of years, ways of remembering things with initials or acronyms and that kind of thing, or rhymes, monosyllabic rhymes, and I think with multisyllabic rhymes there's a huge untapped resource there for people to memorize things very simply by engaging with a word in its basis, just by how it sounds. And I just wanted to give it a couple examples of that. So a little while ago, for example, I asked my girlfriend what are a couple of names that I should know that I might not know, because she's much more intelligent than I am. And the first one she gave was Mark Gertler, who's an artist. He did some art around like carousel. He's got a very famous picture of a carousel that he did. Okay. And I rhymed it with fast learner and hard worker, which I think me and Jamie Blees had before. And because I associated it to those rhymes, it's like what I was saying earlier about Damien Rice. Every time I go to recall that name, I can't think of the name, and it happens very quickly, but I can't think of the name, but my brain does go to fast learner, hard worker, and then in my head I go Mark Gertler, and I put it together. Same with Emily Davison, the suffragette who was trampled by the horse at the racetrack in the early 20th century. I only remember that and the context around it because Emily Davison rhymes with Mesopotamian and Emirates Stadium.
Emirates Stadium, that's great.
And it's only because I said, who's something I should learn? She said Emily Davison. I thought about it. I clocked those rhymes, and then I went. And then it's been months, and I can't forget that information. Same with Samuel Eto'o because he rhymes with Jared Leto. I don't know any footballers. Mesut Ozil because he rhymes with semicircle. I got that from Jamie as well. Things like George Stubbs, a guy who only paints horses. Horse buff. George Stubbs, the horse buff.
Oh, that's nice.
Even when I started, and I didn't really have a proper way to put these things in, I was trying to think of it. That Son of Man, that painting of the man dressed as a gentleman, and there's an apple in front of his face.
Oh yeah, Magritte, right?
Like surreal sort of. So when I saw that and I was trying to remember it, I remembered Covered Apple Cheek, Son of Man, Magritte. And so now I remember he's covered by an apple on his cheek. So covered apple cheek, son of man McGree. I can't forget that now. It's information that's there, and there's context around it that I can't forget, because every time your brain sort of like ping pongs around an idea, it goes, here's the rhyme, here's the name that you're trying to recall, and then a little mini wave of information just comes over it, and you go, oh, that's the surrealist painter, and he was around this time or whatever, you know. Or you see the image, you could probably draw the image because you've associated it so strongly. And that's something I really want to, if I was to do a second book, which I would obviously love to, I would love it to be about the relationship of these kind of rhymes, and then just give hundreds of examples. And then, you know, it becomes sort of like a learning book. If you remember all these rhymes, or if you make your own rhymes for them, then you'll probably never forget them. And this type of way of remembering something has been more useful to me than almost any other type. You know, learning by rote, I forget things way over time. You know, a couple of months down the line, if I haven't like revised it, then I'll forget it. And the same with even the same with you know, mnemonics and, you know, the method of Loki, you know, where you make a story out of it. Those stories fade after a while if you don't revise them. But for this, it just has stuck in there and it just doesn't move. And I just think that's so interesting and really, really worth examining for education and stuff like that.
So, yeah, again, I want to push people to the link, the unbound.com link. We'll put it in the description down below in the comments as well. You know, please go support. Is the cover final? I quite like the cover, the way it's been designed. Is that just a draft idea, or?
It's just a draft, yeah. So it has to be sort of like, that's what a lot of the money goes towards, is like design and actually making the cover and stuff like that. So it's to be finished, but I think it's kind of how I want it to look. I think it just needs to be finessed a little bit, maybe. But yeah, how it looks right now, maybe not the font, but basically how it looks now, I think is pretty much how it's going to look at the end of it. I really like it as well. I'm glad you like it, man. Thank you.
Yeah. So I guess finally, how do people, you know, support other than go for the link? You know, they can follow you, of course, at shuffle_t, right?
At shuffle_t, at shufflet1 on Instagram.
Oh, the Facebook group.
Yeah, Facebook group. Someone pointed out to me the other day that the initials of the book and the group is Art of Rap. As in, it sounds like I'm saying the art of rap,
right.
Which was unintentional. But yeah, follow the that page, which is the advanced rhyming dictionary for rappers and poets, and LinkedIn if you want. Fuck it. Yeah. Just come round to my house, support me that way. Follow me. Come here. Hop round. I'll put on a kettle.
I did inadvertently find Marlowe's old Instagram, which I don't think he really updated. I think it's like Theo have another _ Marlowe or something like that. Like, it's a great handle.
It's Theo _ have _ an _ the word _ then an _ Marlowe _ Yeah, I don't think he's visited that in a little while. But
no, it was great to see. But yeah, as always, guys, follow us at Battle Resume. Patreon is there if you want to support. Leave us a review on iTunes, subscribe, all that sort of stuff. Go back and check out the old episodes when I've had Marlowe on, had Shuffle and Marlowe on. Those are some of my favourite chats. But Shuffle, always good to speak to you, man. Thanks again.
Likewise, thank you very much for having me on, man. Appreciate it.